The night was silent except for the crunch of tires on snow. The headlights cut through the cold mist, revealing nothing but the narrow road stretching into darkness. Cole had been driving for hours, the K9 sitting alert in the passenger seat. But as they rounded a bend, the dog suddenly lunged forward, barking sharply. Then, before Cole could react, Shadow leapt from the car, landing hard in the road, and lay down, directly in front of the vehicle, eyes fixed on the dark ahead. Cole hit the brakes, the truck skidding to a halt just feet from the dog. He called his name, but Shadow didn't move. His gaze never wavered. And then Cole realized, Shadow wasn't looking at the road, he was looking at something standing in it. The crunch of tires on packed snow had been the only sound for the last half hour. Cole was used to long stretches of silence, deployments had taught him to measure time in breaths rather than words, but tonight, the quiet had a different weight. Even with the heater running, the cold had crept in under his collar, settling along his spine. Shadow sat upright in the passenger seat, ears forward, eyes scanning the darkness outside. The dog had been restless for the last few miles, shifting his weight, nose twitching. Cole glanced at him more than once, sensing the tension in his frame. They were 10 miles from the next town, the road ahead twisting through an unlit corridor of forest. Snow clung to the branches, heavy enough to bow them, and the mist had thickened into a pale sheet that dulled the glow of the headlights. Cole rounded a bend, and Shadow moved. It was instant. One moment he was seated, the next his paws were on the dashboard, claws scraping, a sharp bark tearing through the quiet. Before Cole could react, the K9 had leapt across him, pushing his way to the driver's side door. Cole swore, braking hard as Shadow lunged against the handle. The latch clicked, and the door swung open. The cold hit him in the face at the same moment Shadow landed in the snow, directly in the middle of the road. Shadow. Cole's voice was sharp, commanding, but the dog didn't even flick an ear. Instead, Shadow lowered himself, chest flat to the ground, front paws splayed, tail rigid. His eyes locked dead ahead, unblinking. Steam puffed from his mouth in slow, steady bursts. Cole put the truck in park and stepped out, boots crunching in the snow. The cold was worse out here, the mist swallowing sound. "What is it?" he muttered, scanning the road ahead. The headlights illuminated maybe 50 feet before the darkness swallowed everything else. Nothing moved. Shadow's gaze didn't shift. Cole followed it, eyes narrowing. That's when he saw it, or thought he did. At first it seemed like a shadow in the mist, a darker patch barely distinguishable from the night around it. Then it moved. Not much, just enough for the mist to curl unnaturally around its edges. Cole's instincts flared. His hand went to the rifle slung over his shoulder. "Stay," he ordered the dog, though it was unnecessary. Shadow didn't even twitch. The shape didn't advance. Didn't retreat. It simply stood there, half-formed in the haze, in the exact center of the road. Cole stepped forward, squinting against the glare of the headlights. The mist shifted again, and for a fraction of a second he thought he saw a face, pale, too pale, and still. Then it was gone. The forest was silent. No wind. No rustle of branches. Just the slow, deliberate sound of Cole's breathing and the faint ticking of the cooling truck engine. Shadow growled, low and steady. It was the kind of growl that came from deep in the chest, reserved for things the dog didn't just dislike, but recognized. Cole swallowed, his mind ticking through possibilities. A person? An animal? Something else? He took another step, boots crunching loudly in the stillness. The darkness ahead seemed to thicken, the mist folding inward like it was making space for something. The shape reappeared, closer now. Cole's hand tightened on his rifle. His breath misted in the air, drifting upward, and for a heartbeat he could swear the Shadow's breath mingled with his. Shadow's growl cut off abruptly. The dog's body went still again, but his ears stayed pinned forward, eyes burning holes into the darkness. Cole's gut told him two things at once. Whatever was ahead didn't want him to pass, and it was the same reason Shadow had thrown himself into the road in the first place. The mist shifted once more, and the pale oval of a face appeared again, just long enough for Cole to see that the eyes weren't reflecting light. They were absorbing it. Then it stepped forward. Cole didn't move. Neither did Shadow. The only thing shifting was the mist, curling like smoke around the faint, human-like form ahead. The headlights painted it in a weak glow, but the light didn't seem to touch it, as if it were wrapped in something that drank it in before it could land. The figure's first step was deliberate. Slow. Soundless. Snow didn't crunch beneath it. The second step came faster, and Cole's pulse ticked up, his gloved finger brushing the trigger guard of his rifle. "Shadow," Cole said quietly, his voice low and tight. "Stay." The K9 didn't break his stare. His entire body was low to the ground, weight evenly distributed like he was holding the line against an invisible tide. The low rumble in his chest had returned, quieter this time, as if even growling risked drawing too much attention. Cole shifted his weight, boots squeaking faintly in the cold. The shape in the mist was still too far for detail, but its movements were wrong. There was no sway to its arms, no bend in its knees. Just a smooth, gliding forward motion that made Cole's instincts scream not human. He raised the rifle slowly, sights lining with the center of its chest. "That's close enough." The figure froze. Not like it had obeyed. More like it had decided to stop. Cole's breath fogged in front of him, drifting upward into the cold. For a long moment, they stood locked in stillness. Then the wind returned. It wasn't much, just a faint draft down the road, carrying with it a smell that didn't belong in the winter forest. Damp. Metallic. Old. Shadow's head tilted slightly. His ears flicked back once, then forward again. His nose twitched, but he didn't move otherwise. Cole took a cautious step forward, the rifle steady. The truck's headlights lit the snow beneath his boots, the ice-crusted surface catching tiny glints. Another step. The figure didn't move. "Who's there?" Cole called, his voice cutting through the night. The silence that followed wasn't natural. It was deep, hollow, like the air itself had been scooped out and replaced with something heavier. Then the figure took another step. Cole's muscles tightened. His mind calculated distances, 20 feet to the figure, maybe 5 more before he'd fire. But even as he counted, something in him knew bullets wouldn't matter here. Shadow broke his stillness, not by standing, but by pressing himself even lower into the snow, head flat between his paws. His tail didn't twitch. His breathing slowed until it was barely there. Cole's gaze flicked to the trees lining the road. Tall, skeletal trunks stood silent, but the mist between them was moving in a way that didn't match the wind. It was drifting inward, toward the road, like something unseen was drawing it in. His gut tightened. The figure stepped closer again, and this time, Cole saw its face. Not clearly. Just enough. It was pale, but not from cold. The skin had no texture, no pores. The mouth was closed, the lips too thin, the jaw too narrow. And the eyes. They weren't eyes at all. They were hollows. Cole's grip on the rifle shifted. His thumb flicked the safety without conscious thought. The thing stopped again. And for the first time, it tilted its head. The motion was subtle, but it wasn't the curious tilt of a living creature. It was the kind of movement a predator makes when deciding how to attack. Cole didn't like that it wasn't in a hurry. Behind him, the truck idled, headlights blazing through the mist. The warm air from the cab was long gone, cold had seeped into his gear, into his fingers. His breath now came in slow, deliberate draws. "Shadow," he murmured again, not as a command, but as a grounding word, for himself as much as the dog. The figure took another step, then stopped abruptly, like something ahead had caught its attention. Cole frowned. Its gaze had shifted, slightly off to the right, toward the tree line. He followed the angle, peering through the mist, but saw nothing. Then Shadow moved. The K9 rose in one fluid motion, stepping backward toward Cole without breaking eye contact with the thing. His muscles were taut, ready. And that's when Cole realized Shadow wasn't retreating from it. He was making space. Cole stepped back too, instinct overriding thought. The road behind him seemed longer than it had when they'd stopped. The mist around the figure thickened suddenly, swirling upward like smoke from an invisible fire. The hollows where its eyes should have been locked back onto Cole. It didn't advance. It didn't retreat. It simply vanished. One blink, it was there. The next, empty space. Cole's chest tightened. His eyes swept the road, then the tree line, then up, because something told him not to rule that out. Nothing. But the forest was wrong now. The mist wasn't just hanging in the air. It was moving past them, toward the truck. Shadow, Cole began. A heavy thud hit the truck's roof. The sound was heavy, deliberate, not the scattered patter of snow falling from a branch, but the solid thump of weight landing where it shouldn't. Cole's head snapped toward the truck. His breath misted in the frigid air, the metallic tang of adrenaline filling his mouth. Shadow's reaction was instant. The K9's head whipped upward, ears locked, his stance shifting from defensive stillness to predator's tension. A single bark tore from his throat, sharp and cutting through the silence like a warning shot. Cole's eyes swept the roofline, but from this angle, he couldn't see the top. The mist swirling through the headlights made the world beyond 20 feet impossible to read. Another sound followed, softer this time, but worse because of it. A slow scrape. Metal on metal. Whatever was up there was moving. Cole raised the rifle, angling toward the sound. His voice was low but firm. "Show yourself." Nothing answered. Not sound. Not movement. Shadow took a step toward the truck, nose lifted, sending the air. His tail was straight out, the fur along his back rising like bristles. The scrape came again, followed by a muffled creak. Cole's eyes narrowed. The noise wasn't staying in one spot, it was traveling, toward the cab. His mind mapped the positions. Whatever was up there was heading for the driver's side, directly above where he'd been sitting minutes ago. Cole's boots crunched on the snow as he took a step closer to the truck. The mist clung to his gear, cold and damp. "Shadow," he murmured, "on me." The K9 obeyed instantly, moving to his side without breaking his upward gaze. They were 3 steps from the truck when the sound stopped. The stillness was worse than the noise. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, even the wind freezing mid-gust. Cole edged to the driver's door, rifle up. He risked a glance upward, and saw nothing. The roof was bare, just a thin crust of snow reflecting the headlights. Too bare. Snow this undisturbed didn't match something heavy landing moments ago. Shadow's ears swiveled sharply to the right. His head followed, eyes locking onto the dark stretch of road behind the truck. Cole turned, pulse spiking. At first, he thought it was just more mist. Then it thickened, rising higher, curling around itself until it took on shape, a shape low to the ground. Crawling. It moved toward them at an unnatural pace, hands, or what should have been hands, pulling it forward, the elbows bending in ways they shouldn't. Cole's rifle came up. "Stop right there." The thing didn't respond. It closed the distance quickly, the movement too smooth for crawling yet too low to be walking. Shadow stepped forward, planting himself between Cole and the shape. His growl this time was vicious, the kind meant to end things before they began. The crawling figure slowed as it reached the edge of the headlight's beam. It stopped there, head low, its features hidden in the shadow under its own frame. The only thing visible was the pale stretch of its forearms, the skin stretched too tightly over the bones. Cole held his ground, breath steady but shallow. "Get back," he ordered, though he wasn't sure if he meant Shadow or the thing. The figure shifted, and as it did, its head rolled upward, far too far, until its face was staring at them upside down. The hollows where eyes should have been were back, deeper now, as if the darkness inside them had thickened. The mouth opened, not with a sound, but with a long, slow exhale of mist that blended into the air around it. Shadow lunged. Cole caught the movement too late to stop it. The canine hit the thing with enough force to knock a grown man flat. But instead of falling, the figure dissolved under him like mist, Shadow's jaws snapping on nothing. The air where it had been was freezing, colder than the night, cold enough to sting Cole's skin from 6 feet away. Shadow landed, spinning to re-engage, but the figure was gone. The road ahead remained empty. The trees stood still. Cole scanned fast, right, left, behind. A sound broke the quiet. Not the heavy thud from before. This was lighter. More deliberate. Tap. It came from the truck's roof again. Tap. Tap. Cole's jaw tightened. Slowly, he stepped backward until his shoulder brushed the driver's door. He tilted the rifle upward, just enough to cover the roofline. The tapping stopped. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, over the roof, a head appeared. Pale. Featureless except for the deep, black hollows where eyes should have been. It tilted, not side to side, but all the way around, the neck bending until the head hung upside down over the windshield. And then it smiled. Cole didn't breathe. The thing's upside-down face hung over the windshield, framed in frost and mist, the hollows of its eyes locked on him like they'd been waiting for him to notice. The smile, if that's what it was, stretched too far, the edges of its mouth curling up toward where ears should have been. Shadow's growl deepened into a sound that didn't even seem canine anymore, low, vibrating through the air like a warning from something ancient. His stance shifted forward, every muscle ready to spring. The thing stayed still for a heartbeat too long. Cole could feel the weight of its gaze even though those eyes were nothing but black emptiness. His finger tightened on the trigger, but a part of him hesitated, not from fear of missing, but from the bone-deep knowledge that shooting might not matter. Then it moved. Not with a climb or a shuffle. One moment it was hanging over the windshield, the next it was falling. It dropped soundlessly, twisting midair in a way that ignored every rule of anatomy. Cole's rifle came up as his boots shifted back on the ice, but before he could fire, the thing landed between him and Shadow. The impact should have cracked the ice, but it made no sound. Its head was still at the wrong angle, rolling to one side like it was studying him from the floor of some invisible room. Shadow lunged without waiting for a command. His jaws snapped toward its neck, except the thing moved sideways in a blur, not running, just sliding. Like gravity had nothing to do with it. Cole pivoted, keeping his rifle trained. "Shadow, back," he barked, the command sharp and drilled into the dog's bones. But Shadow didn't retreat. He planted himself between Cole and the thing, teeth bared, breath pluming in rapid bursts. The figure straightened, not smoothly, but in jolts, like a puppet pulled on invisible strings. Its head rolled back into place with a wet click that Cole felt more than heard. The mist thickened around them. It was no longer drifting lazily, it was swirling, drawing inward, pulling Cole deeper into Cole's gear until it reached his skin. "You need to leave," Cole said, voice low but steady. He didn't expect an answer, but part of him needed to fill the space between them with something human. The thing tilted its head the other way, the motion slow this time. Then it took a step forward. The sound it made wasn't from its feet, there was no crunch of snow, no shift of ice. Instead, the step brought with it a faint whisper, like wind through a hollow space. Cole couldn't make out the words, if they were words at all. Shadow barked once, sharp and explosive. The thing stopped. Cole took the opening. He shifted left, putting himself closer to the truck's open driver's door. His gut told him they needed the steel and speed between them and this thing. "Shadow, in," Cole commanded, stepping backward. The dog moved without looking away from the figure, circling to the truck side. Cole covered him, rifle steady. The thing didn't follow. It just stood there, head tilted, the mist tightening around its legs like it was part of it. Cole's boots hit the packed snow at the edge of the truck, and that's when the thing moved again. Not toward him. Not toward Shadow. It slid, fast, to the other side of the truck, out of sight. Cole's stomach dropped. "Passenger side," he shouted, rounding the front end. But there was nothing there. Just the slow curling of mist against the body of the vehicle. Shadow jumped into the passenger seat, but instead of sitting, he turned to face the open door and began to bark. Not frantically. Deliberately. One bark. Pause. Another. Pause. Cole froze. That bark pattern wasn't random, it was the one Shadow used to alert him to danger inside a building. The realization hit cold and sharp: whatever was here wasn't outside anymore. It was in the truck. Cole spun, yanking open the driver's door. The cab was dimly lit by the dashboard glow, steam curling from the vents. The seat was empty. The floor was empty. But the smell was wrong. The metallic, damp scent from earlier filled the enclosed space, coating the back of his throat. Then the rearview mirror shifted, just slightly. Cole's eyes followed it upward, and his stomach turned to ice. In the back seat, crouched low and twisted into a shape that didn't belong in a human body, was the figure. Its hands, too long, too thin, gripped the headrests. Its head was bent at an impossible angle to fit under the roof, the hollow eyes locked on him from the shadows. The smile was still there. And in that cramped, breathless space, Cole realized two things at once. It had been waiting for them to get inside. And they were exactly where it wanted them. Cole didn't move at first. Every instinct screamed at him to slam the door and back away, but his training kept him still, processing. The figure crouched in the back seat wasn't hunched like a person hiding, it was folded. Limbs tucked in angles that defied the way joints worked. Its head remained twisted under the roof, the hollow sockets fixed on him. Shadow's bark ripped through the moment. He was still in the passenger seat, body turned toward the rear, teeth bared. The confined space made his growl sound deeper, reverberating in the metal shell of the cab. The thing didn't flinch. Instead, it moved one hand, slow at first, fingers uncurling like a spider's legs waking from sleep. The nails, if that's what they were long and colorless, tapering to sharp, translucent points. Cole's mind measured the distance between him, the open driver's door, and his weapon's barrel. Too tight for comfort, too close for a safe shot without risking ricochet. Shadow made the choice for him. The K9 launched himself across the front seat, jaws aimed for the figure's arm. The sound when he hit it wasn't flesh and bone, it was a dull, hollow thump, like biting into wet wood. The figure reacted, but not in pain. Its head snapped toward Shadow in a blur, mouth opening wider than it should have. No sound came out, just a rush of cold air that dropped the cab's temperature instantly. Cole moved. He swung the rifle, but first, into the thing's shoulder. The impact jolted up his arms, but the figure didn't recoil the way a living thing would. Instead, it shifted its grip on the headrests, and began to pull itself forward. The movement was too smooth, as if its joints weren't fixed in place. Its shoulders narrowed unnaturally to fit between the seats. Shadow released the arm and went for the throat, his growl turning into a guttural snarl. His teeth met resistance, but not enough to stop him from shaking violently, trying to break whatever he'd grabbed. Cole dropped the rifle onto its sling and went for his sidearm. The confined space made his draw slower, but his hands were steady. "Shadow, down," he barked. The K9 disengaged instantly, dropping back toward the passenger seat just as Cole fired. The shot lit the cab in a flash of yellow. The bullet hit center mass, but there was no spray, no grunt, no fall. The figure only rocked slightly, its hollow eyes still fixed on him. Then it lunged. Cole threw himself backward out of the cab, landing hard in the snow. The figure came halfway through the door before stopping abruptly, its hands gripping the frame. Shadow followed, leaping from the truck to stand over Cole's legs, hackles high. For a heartbeat, they were locked there, man, dog, and whatever this was, the mist swirling thicker, closing them in. Then the thing withdrew. Not like it was retreating. More like it had decided this wasn't the moment. It folded back into the shadows of the cab, limbs bending the wrong way until it was simply gone. Cole pushed himself up, breath ragged. Where? A sound cut him off. Not from inside the truck. From above. The roof groaned under weight again, but heavier this time, the metal flexing audibly. Cole and Shadow both turned their heads upward at the same time. The thing didn't peek over this time. It dropped. It hit the snow in front of them in complete silence, rising to its full height. In the open, it was worse, too tall, too thin, its arms hanging lower than they should. The hollows where eyes should be seen deeper, the edges ragged like torn paper. Shadow barked once and lunged, but Cole's arm shot out, catching the harness strap. Wait. The figure didn't move toward them. Instead, it tilted its head to one side, then the other, as though testing their reactions. The smile never faded. Then it stepped back and vanished into the mist at the road's edge. Cole's instincts screamed at him to leave now. He opened the driver's door, ushering Shadow in first. The K9 jumped into the seat, still staring out the windshield. Cole climbed in, shut the door, and threw the truck into gear. The tires spun briefly before catching, the headlights slicing through the fog. They didn't make it 20 feet before Shadow barked again, that same inside the building pattern. Cole's hands tightened on the wheel. He didn't need to ask. He knew. Whatever they'd just seen. It was back in the truck. The truck roared down the icy road, headlights cutting through the mist in fractured beams. Cole's gloved hands were locked around the steering wheel, every muscle in his forearms taut. The cab smelled wrong again, that same damp, metallic tang that clung to the back of his throat. Shadow was rigid in the passenger seat, his gaze locked on the space between them and the back seat. His body was angled slightly, weight shifted forward like he was ready to launch at any second. The low rumble in his chest hadn't stopped since the last bark. Cole didn't look back. Not yet. Every instinct told him that acknowledging it, really looking, might make things worse. The road ahead was a narrow ribbon of snow-packed asphalt, the forest pressing close on both sides. Branches arched overhead in skeletal tangles, some heavy with frost that cracked and fell in the slipstream as they passed. Shadow's growl deepened. Cole's jaw tightened. "Where is it?" he muttered, keeping his voice low. A sound answered him, faint, but impossible to miss. Tap. It came from directly behind his head. Cole's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. At first, it reflected nothing but the empty, shadowed seat. Then, slowly, a pale shape began to emerge from the darkness, like it was being drawn in rather than moving forward. The head appeared first, bent sideways to fit under the roof. Then the shoulders, narrowing impossibly as they slipped between the headrests. The hollows where eyes should be were fixed on him in the mirror, and that same stretched smile began to form. Cole's grip tightened on the wheel. "Not in here," he said under his breath, but it came out more like a plea than an order. Shadow barked, sharp and explosive, then leapt from the passenger seat into the narrow space between Cole and the thing. The movement was so fast the truck swerved, tires catching the ice before Cole could correct. The figure didn't flinch at the dog's sudden attack. It simply shifted, folding its arms back like wings, letting Shadow's teeth snap at empty air. The truck jolted over a patch of frozen ruts, and in that moment, the thing moved. It slid sideways along the ceiling of the cab, head hanging down, the tips of its long fingers brushing the top of Cole's headrest. Cole's skin crawled under his gear. Without thinking, he stomped the brake. The tires screamed against the ice, the truck fishtailing before slamming to a stop sideways across the road. Snow billowed in clouds around them. The sudden deceleration threw Shadow forward, but he recovered instantly, spinning to face the figure. It wasn't in the back seat anymore. Cole's breath came fast now, every sense on overdrive. He scanned the mirrors, the windshield, the side windows, nothing. Then something cold brushed the side of his neck. He jerked around. The figure was crouched in the narrow gap between his seat and the driver's door, folded so tightly it looked like a pile of limbs. Its head was inches from his shoulder, upside down again, the mouth stretched wider than before. Cole slammed his elbow back, catching it under the jaw. The contact was solid, but it didn't grunt or recoil. Instead, it unfolded upward in a single fluid motion until it loomed over him in the cramped cab. Shadow launched. His jaws clamped onto the thing's forearm, teeth grinding against something that felt more like frozen wood than flesh. The figure's head snapped toward the dog, but Cole was already moving. He shoved the door open and rolled out into the snow, boots crunching as he hit the ground hard. Shadow followed instantly, still gripping the thing's arm as he dragged it halfway out with him. The figure's legs unfolded in a whip-like motion, kicking against the doorframe. The force bent the metal inward with a groan. Cole grabbed the rifle from the sling on his back and brought it up, the sight lining on the hollow space where eyes should be. He fired. The crack of the shot echoed through the forest, but the figure didn't fall. Instead, the mist around them thickened so fast it was like being dropped into a cloud. Cole's vision narrowed to only Shadow's dark shape beside him, still locked on the target. Then the figure was gone. Not pulled away. Not run. Just gone. Cole stood there, chest heaving, snow falling in faint dust around him. The only sound was the truck's engine idling unevenly, steam curling from the open door. Shadow released his grip and stepped back, scanning the treeline with every muscle still primed for attack. His breath steamed in fast bursts, his ears swiveling toward every small creak of the forest. Cole forced his breathing to slow. His training screamed at him to get in the truck, drive, and never look back, but something told him the road ahead wasn't any safer than the one behind. The mist was moving again. Not drifting with the wind. Not swirling randomly. It was parting, opening a narrow path into the forest. Shadow saw it too. He stepped forward, nose low, sniffing the edge of that opening. Then he looked back at Cole, ears forward, waiting. Cole shook his head. No. Not a chance. Shadow didn't move from the path. His stance wasn't hesitant. It was expectant, like whatever was in there was the reason he'd laid down in the road in the first place. Cole swallowed hard, his gut tightening. He knew that if they followed, there was no guarantee they'd come back. But he also knew the K9 had never been wrong. Cole stood at the edge of the road, the cold biting through every layer of his gear. The mist ahead hung heavy, curling like smoke, yet parted in a deliberate line between the trees. It wasn't natural, the way it held its shape, the way it waited. Shadow's paws were already planted in the opening, his tail low but straight, ears locked forward. He glanced back at Cole once, and the look wasn't uncertainty, it was insistence. Cole adjusted his grip on the rifle. "You better know what you're doing," he muttered. The first step into the trees was like crossing a threshold. The temperature dropped sharply, each breath turning to frost instantly. The sound of the idling truck faded too quickly, swallowed by the forest until all that remained was the faint crunch of snow underfoot. The trees here were closer together, their trunks gnarled and dark, bark slick with frozen moss. Branches overhead formed a canopy that blocked out most of the moonlight, forcing Cole to rely on the narrow beam of his flashlight. Shadow moved ahead with precision, stopping every few feet to scent the air. His movements were deliberate, silent except for the faint shift of snow beneath his pads. Cole's boots felt louder than they should in the stillness. Every step seemed to echo, bouncing off unseen walls in the mist. After 50 yards, the path began to curve. Cole noted it immediately. The bend was too even, too perfect, like it had been shaped by human hands. Shadow froze at the turn, head low. His ears twitched, then he took 2 careful steps forward and stopped again. Cole followed his gaze, and saw the figure. It was standing in the path ahead, perfectly still, framed by the mist. Tall. Thin. Its arms hung almost to its knees, fingers brushing the tops of its legs. The head tilted slightly, enough to show that it was aware of them. Cole's rifle came up automatically. His finger rested on the trigger guard. "You've got 5 seconds to explain yourself," he called out. The figure didn't move. 1. The mist shifted slightly, curling around its legs like water against stone. 2. The cold deepened, creeping into Cole's gloves, numbing his fingers. 3. Shadow growled, stepping sideways just enough to widen the angle between them and the thing. 4. The figure moved. Not toward them, backward, into the mist. It didn't turn, didn't lift its feet. It simply glided away, the space between them stretching like a drawn-out shadow. 5. Cole didn't fire. Instead, he nodded to Shadow. "Track." The K9 lunged forward, nose to the ground, leading them deeper along the path. The figure's pale shape flickered in and out of sight ahead, never more than a few seconds visible before disappearing again. The forest grew stranger the farther they went. The trees leaned inward, their branches twisting together in patterns that didn't feel random. In some places, the snow underfoot was untouched, even though the canopy above was sparse enough for it to fall. In others, the snow was disturbed, but not by paw prints or boots. The marks were long, dragged lines, like something had been pulled through here. After what felt like half a mile, the path widened into a small clearing. The mist here was thinner, allowing glimpses of the sky above, a patchwork of dark clouds with the moon barely visible. In the center of the clearing stood an old wooden structure. Not a house, not a shed, more like a watchtower, though it was no more than 10 feet tall and built entirely of rough, weathered planks. The figure was gone. Shadow stopped at the edge of the clearing, his gaze locked on the tower. He didn't growl, but his entire body was tense, like he was holding back. Cole scanned the perimeter first. The tree-line was dense, the ground littered with old branches. Nothing moved. He approached the tower cautiously, keeping his rifle ready. The wood was gray and splintered, the nails rusted to the point of crumbling. A small ladder led up to the single platform at the top. From the ground, Cole could see something resting on that platform, a shape covered by a tattered canvas. He glanced at Shadow. Up or down? The dog didn't move from his spot. His eyes never left the structure. Cole sighed. Down it is. He took 1 step toward the ladder, and froze. The sound came from inside the structure, beneath the platform. It was faint, but distinct, slow, deliberate breathing. Cole shifted his stance, angling to see through the gaps in the planks. At first, there was nothing. Just darkness and shadow. Then a hand slid into view between 2 boards. Long fingers, too thin, nails curling into sharp points. Another hand followed. Then the head, bent sideways to fit through the gap, the hollows where eyes should have been locking directly on him. Cole stepped back fast, raising the rifle. Shadow. The dog was already moving, circling to flank the structure. The figure began to push itself through the boards, the wood creaking under the pressure. The gaps were too narrow for a human body, but that didn't stop it, its shoulders compressed unnaturally, bones shifting under skin that didn't resist. Cole's heartbeat roared in his ears. He fired once, the shot splintering the wood inches from its head. The thing didn't flinch. It kept coming, the smile widening as its torso slid free of the boards. Shadow lunged from the side, hitting it mid-escape, his jaws clamping around its arm. The impact knocked it sideways into the snow, but instead of falling hard, it landed like it weighed nothing. Cole advanced, keeping the rifle trained. The figure didn't get up. It lay there, head twisted to watch him, the mist starting to curl tighter around the clearing. Shadow growled, holding his grip firm. Then, without warning, the figure exhaled. The mist rushed inward, so fast it swallowed everything. Cole lost sight of Shadow, the tower, the ground at his own feet. The cold turned suffocating. And somewhere in that white void, the thing whispered. "You followed." Cole's first instinct was to move anywhere, but the mist was too thick now, swallowing depth and direction. The watchtower was just a shadow against the white void, its edges melting away like it was dissolving into the air. Shadow was still there, Cole could hear his growl vibrating through the snow. It was low, steady, not the high-pitched bark of alert but the warning sound he used when something was too close. Cole turned in a slow circle, rifle up, trying to make sense of their surroundings. Every direction looked the same, dense fog, a faint blue-gray glow from the hidden moon, and a snow-covered ground that stretched maybe 10 feet before vanishing. The breathing started again. It came from below. Cole's eyes flicked to the tower. The wood creaked, not from the wind, but from weight shifting somewhere beneath the platform. That was impossible, the base was barely 3 feet off the ground, open on all sides. Shadow's growl deepened. He stepped forward, paws crunching, then stopped dead in front of the tower's ladder. His ears swiveled, not toward the boards above but toward the frozen earth beneath them. Cole crouched beside him. "You smell it, don't you?" Shadow didn't look at him. His nose stayed locked on the ground. Cole scraped at the snow with his glove, revealing a patch of dirt. It was darker than it should have been, wet, despite the freezing air. He brushed more away, exposing what looked like old, warped boards running under the tower. Not a platform. A cover. The moment his fingers touched the wood, the breathing stopped. The silence was worse. It pressed in from every side, as if the forest itself was listening. Cole kept one hand on the rifle while prying up one of the boards. The wood was soft, almost spongy, breaking apart under the pressure. The smell hit first, damp earth mixed with something sour, metallic. Shadow whined, stepping back, tail stiff. His ears flattened, but he didn't take his eyes off the opening. Cole lifted the board the rest of the way. Beneath it, the ground dropped into a narrow shaft lined with stone, disappearing into darkness. The air rising from it was warmer than the forest air, and carried that same smell from inside the truck earlier. Then something moved in the dark. Cole jerked the rifle up, aiming down the shaft. His flashlight beam caught the edge of something pale, a hand, reaching up from the black. The fingers were too long, curling around the edge of the shaft without making a sound. Another hand followed, then a head, the same hollow eyes, the same stretched grin. But this time, it didn't pull itself free immediately. It just held there, suspended, as if deciding whether to come out. Shadow barked once, sharp enough to make the sound bounce off the trees. The figure reacted, not with fear, but with speed. It surged upward, pulling the rest of its body through the opening in a single, fluid motion. Cole stepped back, boots skidding in the snow. The thing landed silently, its height more menacing in the close space of the clearing. Its arms hung loose, its head tilting in that unnatural way again. The mist shifted with its movement, curling around them in a slow spiral. Cole kept the rifle steady. "You've been leading us here," he said. The thing's smile widened, but it didn't speak. It took one step toward him, the snow not crunching under its feet. Shadow moved instantly, placing himself between Cole and the figure, hackles raised. The figure stopped. Slowly, it crouched down until its head was level with Shadow's. They stayed like that for several seconds, dog and thing, locked in a silent stare. Then the figure extended one of those long, sharp-nailed hands. Not toward Cole. Toward the dog. Shadow didn't back away. He sniffed once, short and deliberate. Then his body language shifted, not relaxed, but no longer about to lunge. Cole didn't like it. Shadow, heel. The dog didn't move. The figure tilted its head the other way, as if studying him now. Then it raised its other hand, and pointed toward the forest beyond the clearing. Cole's eyes flicked in that direction. Through the mist, he could barely make out a darker shape among the trees, something on the ground. The figure stepped aside, as if granting them passage. Cole hesitated. This thing had chased them, cornered them, played with them. Now it was, letting them go? Shadow took a step toward the trees. Cole's gut told him to leave. To turn around, push back through the mist to the truck, and never return. But another part of him, the part that had trusted Shadow's instincts all these years, knew that if the dog wanted him to see what was out there, it mattered. He kept his rifle up as he moved forward. Shadow stayed ahead, leading him toward the dark shape. The mist thinned just enough to reveal it, a mound of earth, half buried under snow. Cole's stomach sank. The shape was too even, too deliberate. He dropped to one knee, brushing snow away with his gloves until fabric appeared, weathered, torn, the color almost gone. A coat. Small. He swallowed hard, brushing more snow aside until the edge of a sleeve emerged. His fingers brushed something cold beneath it. Not metal. Not wood. Bone. Shadow whined softly behind him. Cole didn't look back at the figure, he knew it was still there, watching. The mound wasn't old. The snow covering it was fresh, no more than a day or two untouched. And whatever had been buried here, hadn't been buried alone. The snow clung to his gloves, numbing his fingers as Cole dug deeper into the mound. Each movement was mechanical, sweep away snow, scrape at the frozen earth beneath, uncover another fragment. The small coat sleeve gave way to more fabric, bunched awkwardly as if whoever lay beneath had been curled tightly before the soil swallowed them. The fabric was stiff, frozen into its folds, but not so deteriorated that it had been here long. Shadow stayed close, his breath visible in short bursts. He didn't growl now, he just watched, eyes flicking between Cole's hands and the pale figure standing in the mist behind them. Cole brushed away another layer, and his glove hit something solid. Not bone this time, smoother, colder. He pulled at the dirt until it came free. A hand. Small, like a child's, but the skin was almost translucent, veins dark beneath the surface. The fingers were curled, the nails faintly discolored. It looked like it had been reaching for something before freezing in place. Cole felt the weight of the air change, heavier, closer. The figure hadn't moved, but the mist thickened around it, pulsing almost in time with his own heartbeat. He kept digging. The child's arm led to a shoulder, the fabric of the coat torn across it, and then, another hand. But this one was wrong. It wasn't human. Cole froze, his breath catching. The second hand was larger, with elongated fingers tipped in something sharp, not quite claws, but not nails either. The skin was dark, stretched tight over the bones. Shadow let out a low whine, stepping closer, his gaze locked on the inhuman limb. Cole scraped away more snow, revealing where the two bodies met. The child's small frame was cradled, held, against the larger one, as if the creature had wrapped itself around her in some final act. The coat's torn edge suggested a struggle, but there was no sign of a fight in the soil. No deep gouges, no chaotic displacement. They had been placed here carefully, side by side. Cole's mind ran through possibilities, none of them good. If this thing had harmed her, why bury them together? If it had been protecting her, from what? The mist swirled tighter, the pale figure stepping forward just enough for its shape to sharpen. Its long arms hung loose, but its head tilted toward the mound like it was inspecting his work. Cole straightened, rifle in hand. What happened here? No answer. The silence was oppressive, pressing against his eardrums until he could hear nothing but his own pulse. He crouched again, brushing the last snow from the larger body's chest. The clothing was unlike anything he'd seen before, not fabric, not armor, something organic yet shaped, like layers of bark fused into a protective shell. Beneath it, the torso was caved inward, the bones beneath shattered. A kill shot. Cole glanced back at the child's body. There was no obvious wound, no sign of the same trauma. Her face, still partially hidden beneath frost, was peaceful in a way that made his stomach tighten. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faintest sound, not from the figure behind him, but from below. He frowned, leaning closer to the mound. The sound was muffled, rhythmic. Tap. Not a heartbeat. Not breathing. A tapping, steady and deliberate, coming from beneath the ground. Cole reached for his knife, cutting through the last thin layer of packed earth at the edge of the mound. The blade slipped into a narrow gap, and the sound stopped. He pried the soil apart with the knife's tip until he saw it, a small wooden box, wedged into the dirt beneath the larger body's ribcage. He pulled it free. The wood was damp but intact, bound shut with a strip of what looked like leather. The figure in the mist shifted again, its head turning slowly toward the box. Cole didn't open it yet. Every instinct told him that whatever was inside wasn't meant to be touched, not without understanding the cost. Shadow stepped between him and the figure, positioning himself protectively. Cole kept his voice low. "This what you wanted me to find?" The figure didn't answer, but the mist seemed to draw in closer, wrapping the clearing in an unbroken wall. Cole felt the weight of a choice pressing down on him. He could bury the box again, pretend none of this happened, and try to make it back to the road. Or, he could open it here, in the cold heart of whatever this was, and risk finding out why the K9 had stopped him in the first place. His fingers tightened on the leather binding. Shadow growled, not at the figure, but at the box itself. That was new. Cole's gaze flicked between the dog and the pale thing watching them. The figure's grin hadn't changed, but its head tilted further, as if urging him on. A gust of wind cut through the clearing, rattling the tower's boards. The sound was sharp enough to jolt him, and in that moment, his grip slipped. The binding loosened. The lid shifted. A thin wisp of something dark slipped from the crack, curling upward into the freezing air. It smelled faintly of metal and rot. The figure took one step forward. Cole snapped the lid shut. The mist recoiled like it had been struck, swirling faster now, the pale figure retreating a few steps. Shadow barked once, loud and commanding. Cole shoved the box into his pack and zipped it tight. Whatever was inside would have to wait, there was no way he was opening it here. The figure didn't come closer. It simply stood there, watching, as the mist began to shift toward the forest's edge, parting just enough to reveal a sliver of the path they'd come from. An invitation to leave. Or a warning. Cole didn't take his eyes off the figure as he rose from the mound. Shadow stayed pressed against his leg, his body low, muscles coiled. The box in Cole's pack seemed to thrum faintly against his back, as though the thing inside was aware and awake. The mist pulled away from the mound slowly, curling toward the break in the trees. The path it revealed was narrow, just wide enough for them to walk side by side. Cole backed toward it, rifle up, refusing to turn his back on the figure. The thing didn't follow. It stood at the edge of the clearing, its long arms swaying slightly, head tilted as if memorizing his face. "Let's go," Cole whispered. Shadow moved first, taking the lead. His steps were quick, his tail low but steady, ears flicking constantly to track any sound. Cole followed, the packed snow underfoot crunching with each step. The deeper they went into the path, the more the mist began to thin. The air warmed slightly, the oppressive weight in his chest easing, but not vanishing. He could still feel it, like a thread stretching from him back to the clearing. Halfway down the path, the wind shifted again. This time, it carried a sound from behind them. Footsteps. Cole froze. The steps were slow, deliberate, too heavy to be shadows and too even to belong to an animal. They didn't get faster, but they didn't stop either. He glanced over his shoulder, nothing but the fading mist. "Move," he muttered to Shadow. They pushed forward, the path beginning to widen. Cole recognized the trees now, they were close to the road. The faint glow of the truck's headlights cut through the last wisps of mist ahead. Relief tugged at him, but it was brittle, fragile. Shadow reached the edge of the forest first, stepping onto the snow-packed shoulder of the road. Cole followed, blinking against the sudden brightness of the headlights. Then he heard it, the sound of something stepping onto the road behind him. Cole turned fast, rifle raised. The road was empty. The mist was gone. But in the snow, clear as day, was a set of prints. Not human. Not animal. Long, narrow impressions with claw-like tips. They trailed out of the forest and stopped just a few feet from him. The rest of the road ahead was untouched. Shadow growled low, his gaze fixed on the prints. Cole kept his rifle trained on the tree-line. Nothing moved. No sound came. The forest stood as still as if it had never breathed. Finally, he backed toward the truck, opening the passenger door for Shadow. The K-9 jumped in immediately, settling in the seat but keeping his head turned toward the woods. Cole slid into the driver's seat, pack still tight against his back. The box felt heavier now, as if it had absorbed the cold from the clearing. He started the engine. The headlights swept over the road, the trees, the edge of the mist still lingering far in the distance. As he shifted into gear, Shadow let out a single, sharp bark. Cole glanced at him, the dog's eyes weren't on the forest anymore. They were on the pack. Cole's grip tightened on the steering wheel. "Don't start that now," he muttered. But Shadow didn't look away. They drove in silence, the hum of the engine the only sound. The road wound away from the forest, the snow-covered fields stretching into darkness. After several minutes, Cole risked a glance in the rearview mirror. The road behind them was empty, except for one thing. A shape, faint in the distance, standing in the middle of the lane. Tall. Still. Watching. The farther they drove, the smaller it became, until it was swallowed by the dark. But Cole couldn't shake the feeling that it hadn't stayed there. That the thread between them was still tight, stretched over miles now. The first real shiver ran down his spine when Shadow finally looked away from the pack and turned to stare out the side window. Cole followed his gaze. Across the snowy field, in the glow of the moonlight, something was moving. It wasn't close, but it was fast, cutting a straight line through the drifts, heading in the same direction as the truck. The figure from the road had stayed behind. This was something else. Cole pressed the accelerator harder. The engine growled, the tires biting into the snow-covered asphalt. The movement in the field kept pace for another 100 yards, then veered toward the tree line. Within seconds, it was gone, swallowed by the pines. Cole exhaled slowly. His hands ached from gripping the wheel so tightly. Shadow finally settled, his ears still twitching. Cole drove until the road curved into a small service town. The dim glow of streetlights washed over weathered buildings, their windows dark at this hour. He pulled into an empty lot beside a shuttered diner and killed the engine. For a long moment, he just sat there, staring at the frost forming on the windshield. Then he reached back and pulled the pack onto his lap. The box inside shifted slightly as he set it down. He hesitated, the leather binding cool under his fingers. Shadow's gaze locked on him instantly. His lips curled just enough to show teeth, not in threat, but in warning. Cole leaned back, resting the box on the seat beside him. "Not tonight," he murmured. The snow outside muffled every sound. No cars passed. No wind rattled the buildings. But from somewhere out there, faint enough that he almost thought he imagined it, came a single, deliberate tap. Exactly like the one from beneath the mound. Cole didn't sleep that night. And he knew, deep down, that the K9 had been right to stop him in the road.